black, impoverished, homosexual. Oh, I thought I hit the jackpot. Oh, great.
Said, everyone knew I was a lesbian but me.
Hollywood's golden age glittered with fame and glamour, but behind the spotlight, some of its biggest black stars carried a truth they couldn't share. These secretly gay icons risked their careers, their freedom, and their very identities just to live authentically in a world that refused to accept them. And wait until you hear number one. It's a story that will leave you absolutely speechless. Lorenzo Tucker. Lorenzo Tucker was Hollywood's first black heartthrob, often hailed as the Black Valentino. On screen, he was suave, magnetic, and adored by countless fans. But behind the camera, Tucker lived a life filled with secrets, ones that, if exposed in his time, could have destroyed his career overnight. He rose to fame starring in Oscar Michaud's silent films, becoming a symbol of black cinematic charm. But while the public saw a ladies' man, insiders whispered about a different truth. Tucker was rumored to be deeply connected to Harlem's hidden LGBTQ+ scene, an underground world that quietly flourished during the Harlem Renaissance. In those hidden corners of Harlem, where legends like James Baldwin and Langston Hughes found sanctuary, it's believed Tucker, too, found love and belonging. Though he never spoke openly about his sexuality, many say he shared intimate bonds with other male creatives in that tight-knit artistic community. One actor who knew him once said, "Lorenzo was loved by many, but he loved in secret." Hollywood, however, wasn't ready for a man like Tucker. He was so striking that white producers allegedly asked him to darken his skin so he wouldn't be too attractive to white women on screen. Though he never broke into mainstream stardom, Lorenzo Tucker's legacy as a pioneer in black cinema remains powerful. Yet his personal life, filled with silent love, hidden truths, and forbidden connections, remains one of Hollywood's most hauntingly beautiful untold stories. Napoleon Whiting. You might not recognize the name Napoleon Whiting, but chances are, you've seen his face. For decades, he was Hollywood's go-to butler, always standing quietly in the background, delivering lines with grace and dignity. But when the cameras stopped rolling, Whiting lived a life the industry never wanted you to know about. A veteran actor, Whiting appeared in classics like Gone with the Wind and The Big Valley. On screen, he was typecast as the loyal servant, refined, composed, and never the lead. Off-screen, the Hollywood machine kept him boxed into the same narrow stereotype, refusing to see him as anything more. But behind that quiet facade was a man whose real story was shrouded in secrecy. In an era when being a black man in Hollywood was already a challenge, being openly gay could end a career overnight. Still, Whiting was quietly part of an underground LGBTQ+ network, a hidden circle of actors, directors, and producers who lived double lives, safe only in private. According to multiple accounts, Whiting had long-term romantic relationships with men inside the industry, including influential Hollywood insiders. These weren't fleeting affairs, they were deep, committed relationships, kept in the shadows by necessity. One rumor, whispered even decades later, involved a famous white director. The two were frequently seen together at exclusive private gatherings, yet never appeared in public side by side. Their connection raised eyebrows, but in those days, silence was survival. Whiting never publicly discussed his personal life, and over time, Hollywood quietly erased him from its larger narrative. But those who knew him say he was far more than just a background actor. He was a man of talent, dignity, and a hidden story the world was never allowed to hear. For over 40 years, Napoleon Whiting served the industry with loyalty and grace. Yet despite appearing in some of Hollywood's biggest productions, he was never given a leading role. And maybe, just maybe, that was Hollywood's loss. Lee Whipper. Lee Whipper shattered barriers as the first black member of the Actors' Equity Association, paving the way for inclusion in both theater and film. On stage, he was a revolutionary force. But off stage, he lived a life shrouded in secrecy. Best known for his powerful performances in The Oxbow Incident and Of Mice and Men, Whipper earned deep respect in Hollywood and on Broadway. Yet behind that acclaim, whispers followed him. Rumors that he was quietly part of the underground LGBTQ+ community that found refuge within the arts. Unlike many black actors of his era, Whipper held a rare kind of influence. His reputation opened doors to elite creative circles, but that privilege came with a cost: silence. Insiders recalled how he formed close bonds with younger male actors, officially as a mentor, but privately, many believed the relationships ran deeper. Lee had a magnetic presence, one actor once said. He could charm anyone, man or woman. But he never married. And no one dared ask why. Hollywood kept his personal life in the dark, choosing to highlight only the parts that fit its narrative. Still, his legacy in black cinema is indisputable. Lee Whipper was one of the few black actors of his time to work steadily in both stage and screen despite the crushing weight of racism. Yet, like so many pioneers, parts of his truth were buried with him, another untold chapter in the hidden history of old Hollywood. Frederick O'Neill. Frederick O'Neill was a powerhouse, a trailblazer who co-founded the Negro Actors Guild and fought tirelessly for the rights of black performers. On stage, he became a theater legend. Off stage, though, his life was shrouded in mystery. Despite his wit, charm, and commanding presence, O'Neill never had a known public romance, something almost unheard of for a man of his stature. Those closest to him described him as intensely private, especially when it came to matters of the heart. Whispers from the past suggest he may have shared quiet romantic ties with other men in the arts, but in the 1930s and 40s, that kind of truth was a dangerous one, especially for a black man. One insider once said, Frederick knew all of Hollywood's secrets, and carried a few of his own. Many now believe he deliberately hid his true self to protect not just his career, but the larger cause he championed. O'Neill made history as the first black president of the Actors Equity Association and helped establish key labor protections for black actors. Yet Hollywood never gave him the leading roles he deserved, and quietly erased the man behind the mission. So we're left asking, who was Frederick O'Neill when the spotlight dimmed? Juano Hernandez. Juano Hernandez was a true pioneer, a groundbreaking black actor who shattered Hollywood's barriers without conforming to the painful stereotypes of his era. At a time when most black performers were relegated to servile or comic relief roles, Hernandez earned critical acclaim for his powerful performance in Intruder in the Dust. He was celebrated not for caricature, but for craft, a rare and radical achievement in 1940s Hollywood. Yet while his on-screen presence commanded attention, his personal life remained a quiet enigma. Hernandez never married, never spoke publicly about relationships, and was often seen only in the company of other men, fellow actors, writers, and artists. Rumors whispered through studio corridors, suggesting he may have shared deep romantic bonds with men in Hollywood's artistic inner circles. One actor who knew him once said, Juano had a quiet dignity, but he kept everyone at arm's length. That distance wasn't just personal, it may have been survival. In an industry that was ruthless to anyone who strayed from its rigid expectations, some believe Hernandez wasn't just protecting his privacy, he was protecting his career. He outlasted many of his contemporaries, carving a legacy without ever addressing the speculation. Was he simply a deeply private man? Or was he, like so many others, forced to live in the shadows, his truth hidden behind the curtain of survival? Whatever the case, Juano Hernandez's legacy stands as a testament to talent, resilience, and the silent strength it took to endure in a Hollywood that didn't always make room for authenticity. James Edwards. James Edwards had it all, a commanding presence on screen, a trailblazing career, and the respect of critics who saw him as a serious powerhouse actor. But there was one thing he never truly had, the freedom to live as his authentic self. Best remembered for his role in The Manchurian Candidate, Edwards was one of the rare black actors in mid-century Hollywood who flat-out refused to take on demeaning, stereotypical roles. With his striking looks, sharp intellect, and smoldering intensity, he had all the makings of a leading man. But in Hollywood, that kind of integrity came with a price. Whispers followed him, quiet rumors about his private life, his close relationships with certain male actors, and his frequent appearances at exclusive gatherings where women weren't always present. Many believed James Edwards was a closeted gay man in an era when such a truth could end a career overnight. He never spoke publicly about it, and perhaps that silence was his way of surviving in a ruthless, judgmental industry. Some say the biggest roles slipped through his fingers not because of talent, he had plenty, but because of unspoken fears among studio executives about what his personal life might reveal. One film historian put it bluntly, he had everything it took to be a star, but Hollywood had other plans. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Edwards never married or flaunted a public relationship. Was it his choice? Or was it a quiet act of self-preservation in a world that demanded conformity? James Edwards should have been a household name. But the shadows cast by Hollywood's double standards may have kept one of its brightest from ever fully shining. Noble Johnson. Noble Johnson wasn't just an actor, he was a trailblazer, a quiet giant in the golden age of silent film. Long before Hollywood opened its doors to diversity, Johnson kicked them down. He founded the first black-owned film production company, championed roles that broke stereotypes, and helped countless black actors find their footing in an industry that often shut them out. But behind the spotlight and success, there was a part of Johnson's life he never allowed the world to see. While his powerful performances in classics like The Ten Commandments and King Kong earned him fame, his private life remained a mystery. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Johnson never married, never flaunted a romance, and never spoke of love in public, sparking whispers that lingered behind closed doors. Hollywood insiders speculated that Noble Johnson lived a hidden truth, that he may have shared romantic relationships with men at a time when such a revelation could destroy a career. His unusually close ties with certain male co-stars and influential studio executives only fueled the rumors. Some believe he was part of a quiet, powerful LGBTQ+ circle that existed in the shadows of old Hollywood. One film historian once said, "Noble Johnson was a visionary, not just in cinema, but in the way he navigated a world that wasn't ready for all of who he was." With financial independence and control over his work, Johnson may have been able to shield his private life from the public eye, a luxury few could afford. We may never know the full truth. But what we do know is this: Noble Johnson changed the game for black performers and filmmakers. He redefined what was possible, both on screen and behind the scenes. And perhaps, beneath the silence, he carried a personal story that Hollywood just wasn't ready to tell. Paul Winfield. Paul Winfield had a voice that commanded attention and a presence on screen that was simply unforgettable. With powerful performances in Sounder and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, he became one of the rare black actors to break into mainstream Hollywood without being boxed into stereotypes. But while the cameras captured his talent, they never revealed the truth he quietly carried for decades: his love life. Behind closed doors, Winfield lived with quiet restraint, fiercely guarding the man he loved in a time when coming out could destroy a career. Whispers followed him through the years, rumors of close bonds with fellow male actors and a long-term relationship kept out of the spotlight. It wasn't until much later in life that Winfield publicly acknowledged he was gay, something that would have been career suicide in his early years. A journalist once described him as always dignified, always careful, and that caution was a shield he wore for most of his life. Though he became an icon and eventually a beacon of hope for LGBTQ+ actors, the emotional toll of hiding his truth was something he rarely spoke of. His performance in Sounder earned him an Oscar nomination in 1972, an incredible achievement at a time when few black actors were recognized at all. Paul Winfield soared, but the silence he carried came at a heavy cost. Brock Peters. Brock Peters had a presence that lit up the screen, powerful, commanding, unforgettable. Audiences knew him as the man who gave a soul-stirring performance as Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird, a role that etched his name into Hollywood history. He later brought that same gravitas to Star Trek and dozens of other acclaimed films. But off-screen, Peters was a man cloaked in mystery. Despite his fame, he never married, never publicly dated, and was often seen only in the company of other male artists. Rumors quietly swirled through Hollywood circles, suggesting that Peters may have been part of the era's hidden LGBTQ+ community. One insider once whispered, "Brock didn't speak much, unless you were truly close to him." That silence only deepened the intrigue. He never spoke openly about his sexuality, and perhaps he didn't need to. Yet the absence of any public romantic ties over decades has left fans and historians wondering, was he a man forced to hide, or one who simply chose to live on his own terms? One thing is certain: Brock Peters was deeply respected. So much so that when Gregory Peck passed away, it was Peters who was chosen to deliver his eulogy. An honor few ever receive in Hollywood, and a final testament to a man who kept the world guessing until the end. Avon Long. Avon Long didn't just perform, he electrified every stage he stepped onto. With a voice that could shake the rafters and a presence that demanded attention, his charisma was undeniable. Audiences adored him, but behind the bright lights and curtain calls, there was a truth he never wanted the world to see. Long rose to fame with unforgettable roles in Porgy and Bess and Roots, becoming a respected name in both Broadway and Hollywood. But while his talent shined in public, his personal life remained shrouded in mystery. Whispers swirled around him. Rumors of secret romances with male actors and musicians whispered even louder in the artistic circles of the Harlem Renaissance. Those who knew him best described him as magnetic, irresistibly charming, yet emotionally guarded. Avon could draw a crowd like nobody else, one actor recalled, but he always kept a part of himself hidden. Though he never publicly spoke about his sexuality, many believe he was a quiet pillar within New York's underground LGBTQ+ arts community. Even so, Avon Long's legacy as both a trailblazing performer and silent activist endures. His portrayal of sportin' life in Porgy and Bess is still considered definitive, brash, brilliant, and unforgettable. But one haunting question remains: did Avon Long spend his entire career applauded for a role, while the man behind the curtain remained unseen? Billy Daniels. Billy Daniels was the very picture of suave sophistication, smooth, stylish, and effortlessly cool. With a velvet voice that made women swoon and a stage presence that lit up every room, he became one of the most unforgettable entertainers of his time. Best known for his hit, That Old Black Magic, Daniels broke barriers as one of the first black performers to headline in Las Vegas and star in his own network television show. On the surface, he had it all: the fame, the charm, the adoration. But behind the curtain, Billy carried a secret that clashed with his carefully crafted public image. Despite being constantly surrounded by adoring female fans, Daniels never seemed truly interested. Whispers floated through Hollywood and Vegas showrooms, rumors that he was in a long-term relationship with a male dancer. Some even claimed he had discreet affairs with other famous actors who were also forced to hide their identities in a time when being openly gay could destroy a career. One former Vegas showgirl put it bluntly, Billy was magnetic, but you could tell his heart was somewhere else. Those closest to him knew the truth, that he lived a double life, torn between the man the world wanted him to be and the man he truly was. Daniels never spoke publicly about his sexuality. Maybe he was protecting his career. Or maybe the world simply wasn't ready for the real Billy Daniels. Either way, his legacy remains one of both dazzling success and quiet sacrifice. A star who made history while hiding his truth from the spotlight. Raymond St. Jacques. Raymond St. Jacques wasn't just an actor. He was a force of change, a pioneer who challenged the system from the inside out. In an era when black men were expected to play butlers, buffoons or background characters, he shattered stereotypes and demanded roles that reflected strength, dignity, and complexity. His performances in Cotton Comes to Harlem and The Green Berets weren't just roles, they were statements. And when he became the first black actor with a regular role in a major Western TV series, Rawhide, it was nothing short of historic. But while the spotlight revealed a bold and confident man, the shadows told a different story, one Hollywood was too afraid to confront. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered of St. Jacques' relationships with men, including a few prominent names in the industry. In private LGBTQ+ circles, he was said to be warm, open, and unapologetically himself. Yet in public, he had to navigate a world that wasn't ready to accept a black man who was both powerful and possibly gay. One producer once remarked, Raymond was fearless on screen, but off-screen he had to walk a tightrope. Being openly gay in Hollywood during that time could end your career, especially if you were black. Though he never publicly addressed the rumors, Raymond St. Jacques lived life by his own rules. He kicked down doors for those who came after him, even while battling quiet storms of his own. His legacy as a Hollywood trailblazer is undeniable, but behind that legacy may have been a man quietly fighting for the right to be fully seen. Canada Lee. Canada Lee was more than just a talented actor. He was a fearless activist, a rebel who refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. While he battled racism head-on in 1940s Hollywood, he may have also been fighting a more private war within himself. Best known for his powerful roles in Lifeboat and Cry, The Beloved Country, Lee broke barriers as one of the few black actors to land meaningful roles during that era. But his outspoken stance against racial discrimination came at a price. He quickly became a target in an industry that preferred its black stars quiet and compliant. As whispers grew, so did the weight on his shoulders. Behind the scenes, rumors swirled about Lee's close ties with male writers, actors, and political figures connected to the underground LGBTQ+ community. One director who worked with him once admitted, Canada wasn't afraid of much, but when it came to his private life, the door was firmly closed. In 1950s America, being black was dangerous enough, but being black and rumored to be gay could destroy a career or worse. During the Red Scare, Lee was blacklisted and labeled a communist sympathizer, a death sentence in Hollywood at the time. He died at just 45, his story half told, his truth buried beneath fear and prejudice. Was Hollywood silencing him for his activism? Or was there something deeper they didn't want the world to see? Ironically, Lee had originally been cast in The Emperor Jones, but was later replaced by Paul Robeson, another black icon, and another man with rumored LGBTQ+ ties. Maybe the real story isn't just about who made it to the screen, but who never got the chance to be fully seen. Johnny Mathis. Johnny Mathis had one of the smoothest, most romantic voices in music history. His songs made generations fall in love. But behind those timeless ballads was a personal story Hollywood tried hard to keep in the shadows. Mathis wasn't just a beloved singer, he was deeply entrenched in the golden age of Hollywood, rubbing elbows with the biggest stars of the era. Yet, for decades, he kept one part of his life entirely hidden. It wasn't until much later that Johnny Mathis quietly confirmed what many had long suspected: he was gay. In a rare and understated interview, he simply said, "Being gay is just a way of life for some people." But back in the 1950s and 60s, such honesty could have destroyed a career overnight. Whispers swirled about secret romances with major Hollywood figures, though Mathis never revealed any names. One music industry insider once remarked, Johnny was a heartthrob for millions of women, but the real story was far more complex. Even after coming out, Mathis remained intensely private about his personal life. He shattered barriers in music with his talent, but did Hollywood's pressure force him to live in silence? Few people know that before choosing music, Johnny was nearly an Olympic athlete. He came within inches of making the US Olympic team for high jumping. In every sense, Johnny Mathis was a man who soared, on stage and off, even if the world never saw how high.
Percy Rodriguez.
Percy Rodriguez had a voice that didn't just speak, it resonated. Whether narrating iconic movie trailers, appearing in Star Trek, or portraying soulful depth in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, Rodriguez didn't just act, he commanded. On screen, he exuded quiet strength, intelligence, and dignity. Qualities rarely afforded to black actors during his time. But behind that powerful presence was a man wrapped in mystery, and a truth Hollywood never dared to acknowledge. Though respected across the industry, Percy never spoke publicly about his private life. Rumors quietly circulated. He was said to be especially close with certain male actors and filmmakers, leading to whispers that his off-screen identity was far from the tough, no-nonsense roles he played. One colleague once said, "Percy didn't say much, but he saw everything, including how this town treated LGBTQ+ actors, especially if they were black." He never addressed the speculation. And Hollywood, in typical fashion, looked the other way. But in an industry notorious for forcing gay stars into silence, you have to wonder, was Percy Rodriguez one of them? And yet, despite the unspoken truths, he made history. As the first black actor to portray a Starfleet commander in Star Trek, Percy shattered racial barriers in science fiction. But the legacy he left behind is more than what we saw on screen, it's what he dared not say out loud.
Woody Strode.
Woody Strode was more than just a Hollywood tough guy, he was a real-life warrior. A former NFL player, a decorated World War II veteran, and a trailblazing actor, Strode carried an air of raw masculinity that captivated audiences. He made history with powerful roles in Spartacus and The Professionals, where his strength and presence lit up the screen. But behind the spotlight, some say his most difficult battle was one he had to fight in silence. Rumors have long followed Strode, whispering of secret romances with men before his Hollywood fame began. In an era where being different could destroy a career, insiders claim he was part of a hidden circle of actors forced to conceal their true selves. One fellow actor once said, "Woody never backed down from any fight, except the one Hollywood wouldn't let him win." His close friendships with powerful men in the industry only deepened the speculation. Later, Strode married, but to some, it felt more like a strategic move than a love story, a carefully placed shield to keep the questions at bay. Before he broke barriers on the silver screen, Woody Strode shattered them in sports as one of the first black players in the NFL. But perhaps his greatest legacy is not just what he achieved publicly, but the private courage it took to survive a system that never allowed him to fully be himself.
Cab Calloway.
Cab Calloway wasn't just a music icon, he was a force of nature. A trailblazing bandleader, electric performer, and larger-than-life personality who helped define the golden age of jazz. Audiences knew him for his high-energy stage presence, unforgettable hits like Minnie the Moocher, and scene-stealing roles in Hollywood films. But behind the dazzling spotlight was a swirl of whispers and rumors that followed him throughout his career. While the world celebrated his flamboyant style and magnetic charisma, few knew the deeper truth. Behind closed doors, insiders claimed that Calloway lived a more complex personal life, rumored to have had relationships with both men and women, a taboo topic for a black entertainer in his era. His dazzling charm made everyone feel seen, man or woman. One former bandmate once confessed, Cab had a way about him. He could light up a room and make you feel like you were the only one in it. Many believe he used that charm to carefully shield his private life from the press, never confirming nor denying the rumors. Hollywood didn't dare ask, and he never offered. But over the years, more stories quietly surfaced, painting a portrait of a man who may have defied every label.
Was he bisexual?
Or simply someone who lived unapologetically, refusing to be boxed in? Beyond the stage, Cab Calloway also left an indelible mark as a mentor. Most notably to a young Quincy Jones, helping shape the future of jazz, pop, and black music in America. His legacy is not just one of music, but of mystery, courage, and defiant individuality.
James Baldwin.
James Baldwin wasn't just a writer, he was the unspoken conscience of Hollywood. Though he never stepped into the spotlight as an actor, he moved in the inner circles of Tinseltown's biggest stars, and he knew their deepest secrets. Through groundbreaking works like Giovanni's Room, Baldwin boldly explored LGBTQ+ themes long before Hollywood dared to even whisper them. But off the page, the rumors swirled. It was said he had intimate ties with several prominent actors and entertainers, many of whom were forced to live double lives. His deep bond with Marlon Brando and other iconic names fueled speculation that their connection went far beyond the intellectual. To those struggling behind closed doors, Baldwin was more than a friend, he was a confidant. James didn't just write about love, one Hollywood director once said. He understood the agony of hiding it. He saw how the industry demanded silence, masks, and secrets, and he poured that pain into his words. Though Baldwin eventually chose to live more openly, he carried the hidden weight of an entire generation of closeted stars. Just how many secrets did he take with him to the grave? Before his death, Baldwin began work on a screenplay about Malcolm X. Raw, powerful, and unapologetically black. But Hollywood turned its back.
Too radical. Too real. Too honest.
Just like Baldwin himself.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr. was the definition of a showbiz legend. He could sing, dance, act, and light up any room with his magnetic charm. But behind the spotlight and glamorous Rat Pack lifestyle was a private life far more complex than the public ever knew. While he mingled with Hollywood's elite, whispers followed him. Rumors of secret relationships with men that clashed with a public image the industry so carefully curated. Those close to Davis claimed he didn't care about labels. He loved who he loved.
But Hollywood did care.
At a time when being black in the industry was already an uphill battle, living openly as bisexual would have been career suicide. To keep the rumors at bay, he was reportedly pressured into a high-profile marriage with a white actress, a union that raised even more eyebrows than it silenced. Was it love, or just another smokescreen crafted by studio execs desperate to protect their image? Sammy never publicly confirmed the speculation, but insiders insist he carried deep, private truths he could never share. In the 1960s, he converted to Judaism, saying it gave him a sense of belonging in a world that often pushed him to the margins. But even among the brightest lights of Hollywood, Sammy Davis Jr. may have been its biggest open secret.
Sidney Poitier.
Sidney Poitier wasn't just a Hollywood star, he was Hollywood royalty. The first black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor, he stood as a towering symbol of dignity, excellence, and breakthrough. But behind that polished public image, whispers never fully faded. Rumors of secret relationships carefully buried beneath the surface. To the world, Poitier was the perfect gentleman, the embodiment of grace. Yet for decades, industry insiders quietly claimed he had private relationships with men. Relationships that, if true, were quietly erased to protect his image and the fragile acceptance he had earned in a racially divided Hollywood. At a time when just being a successful black man in film was revolutionary, being openly anything more might have destroyed him. Sidney was cautious, one longtime friend once admitted. He knew exactly what was at stake. Whether those whispers were truth or just another piece of Hollywood folklore, one thing is undeniable. Poitier had to carry the weight of perfection in a world that offered no room for flaws, especially not for a black man at the top. He refused roles that portrayed black men as weak or criminal, choosing instead to play heroes, dignified, proud, and strong. But now we ask, was Hollywood hiding part of his story all along? If you're fascinated by the secrets Tinseltown tried to keep buried, stay tuned. The next video reveals even more shocking truths behind the spotlight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a moment. And tell us in the comments, who surprised you the most?